Thank you so much for joining me today to talk about Murder on the Orient Express by Agatha Christie. This is one of my favorite books of all time and honestly one of the best murder mysteries ever written, but I am getting ahead of myself. If you are new here, welcome to the channel. Here we discuss books, and I would love for you to consider subscribing so that you never miss an upload. I think what drew me to this book originally was the fact that it is set on a train. And there's just something about a closed circle mystery where you have a limited amount of people who could have committed the crime, and then you have to figure out who it was and why they did it, that just really appeals to me. And this book does not disappoint. So before we get started, let me tell you, if you like fast-paced action, lots of plot twists, unreliable narrators, this is going to be the book for you. And with that being said, let's get into the story without giving any spoilers. Hercule Poirot is a brilliant detective, but he's also very particular about the cases that he takes on. He tends to take cases that are more intellectual. He doesn't like ones that require too much physicality because he is, after all, growing older. However, he decides to take a case in this book because it affects him personally. And the reason for that is because he has been on vacation trying to recover from the aftermath of World War I, and he had hoped to spend the rest of his vacation in warmer climates. However, when his plans for travel fall through due to inclement weather, he decides to board the Orient Express, which will take him to his final destination, where he can hopefully still catch a boat to warmer climates. When he boards the train, he meets an eclectic group of people, including a man named Ratchet, who is extremely reclusive and keeps his door locked most of the time. A woman named Mary Debenham, who is traveling with her maid, Mrs. Hubbard. There's a colonel and his wife, Colonel and Mrs. Armstrong, as well as Princess Dragomiroff and her maid, who are both traveling in the same compartment together. There's also Hector McQueen, a doctor, and lastly, a man named Pierre Michel, who seems to know Mr. Ratchet from the past. As the train travels across Europe, there is a storm, and they end up stranded in a small town called Estenock. As soon as the train arrives, there's actually some suspicious characters that show up at the train station. These men try to search the train for a stowaway, but they don't find anything. And shortly after they leave, Poirot goes to his compartment only to find Mr. Ratchet stabbed to death in his bed. Because the train is snowed in, they are unable to leave. And once the investigation begins, it becomes apparent that everyone on the train had a motive for wanting Ratchet dead. So now Poirot has to figure out who did it and why. Now I'm only 37% through this book as of recording this video. And honestly, I could talk about it forever because it's such a page-turner. But I'm gonna try to keep this relatively spoiler-free. One thing I love about this story is that the reader knows as much as Hercule Poirot does, so we get to see the suspects and their interactions. And we're also privy to all of the information that he is given during the course of the investigation. The chapters alternate between the first person, which is Poirot reflecting on the case, and then third person, which follows the other characters on the train. The first thing that Poirot tries to do once the murder has been discovered is to get a list of all the passengers and crew members, along with figuring out who has access to the various compartments. That's when he discovers that someone has already stolen Mr. Ratchet's key, which means they had access to his room, which makes them a potential suspect. Of course, this is shocking to everyone, since typically keys don't get duplicated for any of the rooms on the train. And then Poirot proceeds to interview each passenger, asking them questions about their relationship with Mr. Ratchet and what they were doing at the time of the murder. What becomes obvious to us as readers, as well as to Poirot, is that almost every passenger has something to hide, and they're all lying to protect themselves. Even some of the crew members seem to be hiding things as well. Poirot, being the brilliant detective that he is able to piece together a timeline of events that happened before the murder. And what we discover is that Mr. Ratchet had been blackmailing several of these passengers. He had managed to obtain evidence that they had done questionable things in the past, perhaps even criminal things, and he threatened to expose them unless they paid him a large sum of money. So now the question becomes, who specifically was being blackmailed and why? Were they willing to pay Mr. Ratchet off, or did they kill him instead? You'll have to read the book to find out. What I love about this book is that each character is so uniquely drawn. Even though we don't spend a lot of time with them, we still learn enough about their personalities, their relationships, and their backstories to make them feel real. We also get to see how they react under pressure and how they deal with the discovery of a murder in their midst. Some of them become hysterical, while others remain calm and collected. And there are a few who seem to relish in the chaos. The dialogue is sharp and witty, and the pacing is perfect. The mystery is intricate and well thought out, and the clues are subtle but significant. It's the kind of story that keeps you guessing until the very end. And even when the truth is revealed, there are still some surprising twists and turns. If you're a fan of murder mysteries or just a good old-fashioned whodunit, then this is definitely a must-read. It's a classic for a reason, and it's a book that I think everyone should experience at least once in their lifetime. So with that being said, let's move on to the next section of this video. If you enjoyed this book, I think you might also enjoy The ABC Murders by Agatha Christie. In that book, Hercule Poirot is called in to investigate a series of murders that are happening around the country. Each murder is more puzzling than the last, and Poirot has to race against time to catch the killer before they strike again. The ABC Murders is a fantastic mystery that will keep you on the edge of your seat. And if you like fast-paced action, lots of plot twists and unreliable narrators, then you'll definitely appreciate it. So if you're a fan of Murder on the Orient Express, I highly recommend checking it out. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you love books and discussing books, consider subscribing. I would love to have you here. Thank you again for joining me today, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. Bye.